that we have Benjamin's team, who's gonna make the best roster change? Do you think in the offseason? Who's gonna make the best team? Toronto or LAG?
Yeah.
Why is that? Hold on.
We cannot
They
hear
can't hear
Ben.
you. Let's make this fucking let's make this more sensitive.
All right.
Good. Say
I
with your
move
chest,
this up. Do I
man.
move this up or down? Do you hear him, chat? I made him more sensitive. So they should hear you. If they say yes, we'll continue the conversation. If they hear you. They hear you? Yes, yes. All right, Ben, why is the LAG and Toronto, why are those teams the teams that are going to come out on top on WrestleMania? Why?
So here's why I think so. One is, each situation is a little bit different. So LAG, you got to think about is an org where players know that they can get a lot of money.
Facts.
They know they get support from the franchise. Like they take care of their players. They have some really interesting pieces on their roster. And I did a video on this and talked about this. If you check out my YouTube account.
Go check it out.
So I think with that combination, they're going to be able to attract some of these key free agents. So there's that
not
situation.
A free agent, no.
And by the way, they only have a couple of players that are free agents, but they're pretty good. Toronto situation, I think the thing with Toronto is not only Dylan's asking what the intel is, as if he's not domino number one. Dylan is. You look at like the stack of dominoes in the front of the. It's like the first domino is Dylan's face.
Where's Attach gonna go?
Where's
Dylan Attach gonna go, Ben?
Chat, are we crowdsourcing Dylan's location here?
I know where he's gonna go.
Where do y'all think Attach is gonna end up, Ben? Let's start with you.
I think
I actually know where Attach is going.
We're gonna see it. Dylan would love OpTic Dylan.
I was gonna
But
say
being
OpTic.
realistic,
He'd be a great fit.
as much as we love OpTic Attach, I think Dylan might be joining the boys on LAG. I think if all things go the way it should.
Whoa!
Intel!
Whoa!
What about staying on Minnesota? Do you think that's likely at all?
Listen, I mean, I think Minnesota takes care of their players, so. If they give Dylan a good offer, and this is up to the boy Dylan Attach in the chat, I could see it happening.
Okay, what about Hydra? What's going on with Paco? He's a superstar free agent for the New York Sublines. Does New York drop him the bag and build around him?
I think they will, but there'll be some other interested people. So I think you and I, especially, will put our ear to the ground over the next couple of days as we start to hear about some of these teams being formed. But, Hydra is someone that I think a lot of teams would want to pick up to upgrade their sub position. For example, a good example of a team I think that would be interested in Hydra is like a team like Boston, who's got some interesting pieces. They have some good subs, but they might be looking to maybe upgrade one of their subs. I could see it. Would it be a front runner for Hydra? That's not really the question, and I don't know if I would say yes, but they are definitely someone that will try to talk to and be interested,
What's going on with OpTic Texas? Do you think they're going to stick together? Do you think there's going to be changes? I mean, where's your head at with OpTic?
So I did a video on OpTic today, so if you check out my YouTube account, it's out there.
Check it out.
It's got some good clickbait title too. So I think the option A for OpTic is they should stick it, because I don't really know in terms of swaps, the upside in the moves and the players that you bring in doesn't really make sense. They obviously didn't have like an A+ year. But I don't really know that there are players that are reasonable out there that they can get that would improve their team overall. There are definitely players out there that would improve their team, but keeping in mind getting some of those players is probably impossible unless you want to pay super high buyouts. And I also think the OpTic camp probably wants to run it back with this roster because they play good at the beginning of the season. With like a full offseason and figuring out Ellie's situation, I don't think they're changing.
All right, so next I want to ask you about Clayster. Obviously, superstar. He's won multiple rings, multiple championships. He's a legend to the scene. Finds himself on a bench with the New York Subliners. Obviously wasn't playing to his potential at the start of the year. I think he will also admit that. But he wants to get back in there and show to everybody what he can do. Where does Clay go, if anywhere at all? Do you think Clay will find a spot on a team?
Yeah, I think Clay will find a spot. I think Clay is one of those players that franchises will look to probably potentially, and he'll probably try to negotiate it too, get the keys. And when we say get the keys, like have the ability to like form a team as sort of the captain of the team. There's always like owner and GM input on it, but a lot of how these roster changes go down, these teams form as the players talk to each other, then they pitch it up. So I think Clay could end up in that situation. I see like a lot of squad wipe spots potentially is where he can land. So again, we mentioned like a Minnesota or an LAG. I could see it there. there might be, interesting other franchises. I mean, listen, Clay's a huge brand. So outside of the gameplay stuff, he brings in a lot of sponsors and a lot of attention. But I think on the Clay side, what orgs will probably ask from him, right, is one is obviously he's going to need to step up sort of in the stats game. He didn't have a great season at the CDL level this year. And, not really a remarkable season in Challengers. But you and I both know Clay's very good. If he puts his mind to it and he grinds, like, he's a great player. And I just think that he's got to get out of this sort of perception that, he's not always a plus teammate. I think a lot of orgs are going to ask him to improve in that demeanor, which he can definitely do.
Right. Another question for you. Skies and Awakening, part of the Florida Mutineers, now free agents. You know that they were the go-to guys on the Florida Mutineers. Where do you see Skies and Awakening going, or do you see them staying with the Florida Mutineers?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
I don't really have a great sense on the sort of the Florida situation. Like, I've heard rumors it goes both ways, right? Like, they want to re-sign their players, but they might also like kind of look to be more of a development team going forward. So we'll have to see how that breaks down. If both of them are not going to re-sign and go somewhere else,
Development team?
like in terms
they're gonna develop. Their goal is just to get young guys, develop them, and sell them.
What
are they fucking?
I don't know if it's like selling necessarily, but it's more like trying to not spend money on veterans and expensive contracts and try and invest in some younger talent and like develop that team and make them a contender. I think that's probably more of a path. But for Bigwig and Skies, like we talk about again, Toronto, LAG, Minnesota, New York, are interesting spots for both. They both there are a lot of needs at the AR position. And they both kind of fill sort of different things that people are looking for. I think Skies will bring that more leadership, more veteran, kind of helping you develop a system presence. But Big Wake, sort of the, really good instinctual player, is really good at playing his life, more of a featured slayer type. So like I could see them definitely getting a lot of offers, and I'm curious sort of what teams we start to hear them sort of landing on over the next like 6 to 7 days.
So obviously people want to talk about expansion a little bit. I know it's been said in the past. There's been rumors about teams coming in. How likely do you think it is with the expansion coming in? Do you see the league expanding going into MW2 on a 2-year cycle?
So right now I haven't heard, and you probably haven't heard anything about potential new teams coming in. I feel like if it would happen, we would hear about it for now. What I am curious about, or potentially two situations. One is obviously to get more clarity on this Paris-Vegas whole thing, because all we've gotten was that tweet from like a few months ago, and we haven't really heard anything else. And then there's always like the potential that another team sells their spot to somebody else. And that doesn't necessarily need to be kind of going around the scene now. We've seen that stuff happen very late into the fall and the winter, like before the season starts. But in terms of new teams coming in, like I haven't heard anything on that.
Now I want to talk to you a little bit about Donny Temp. Let's move over to Donny. Donny obviously had a good year individually, statistically. With the Paris Legion. Now, obviously, Paris going over to Vegas. I think it's going to be the same people running the team. Where do you think Donny lands himself? Do you see him switching teams? Do you see him re-signing with Vegas? Where's your head at with Don?
So I'm curious how Vegas is going to do this. My sense is they will not pick up the team options on all 4 of their roster members. I think 5 because they have an active sub. That's not theory. And then from there, we'll take their sweet time in deciding their team. But obviously, if they're going to be more aggressive in this offseason, I think we'll find out pretty quickly, like through the scene kind of in sources, that they're actually like going to be a spender. As far as where Don goes, I'm very curious because he had a really good season. I think there's a really good path forward for Don to get on a very good team. So I'm curious to see if he gets in the mix on some of these new potential teams. That are going to form on some of these, especially some of these spots. Like we talk again, like a Minnesota, where clearly they're probably going to start fresh with their team. Like, does he get in the mix in one of those 4 spots? Does he get on another existing team looking to make 1 or 2 changes to existing players? Like, I'm curious.
Let's move over to Boston Breach. I feel like they had a pretty disappointing final event to the season. I feel like they had a lot of ups and downs, mostly downs. Where do you see that team going with the future? Do you see them staying together? And if they don't, where do you see some changes being made? Do you see with the subs? Do you see with the ARs? I mean, what are your opinions on that?
So I'll have a video on Boston going out probably later this week. It's an interesting situation. The Race Vivid pickup was really smart, and I would say that by default, you probably, unless like Hydra or Afro is really in play for your franchise, I think you're probably keeping both those guys as subs. We talked about this on a flank, probably the last flank or the flank before that, like it's just really hard to just get new SMGs. You really need to hold on to them the way the market's built right now. At the AR positions, I could see some potential changes. My guess is that Zin probably stays. I wouldn't say that his spot is probably like 110% safe down the line, but I think Zin definitely provides some value. I think Tej's spot is definitely a question mark. Again, I think you keep Tej if you can't find an upgrade for him, but if there's someone that's interested in coming to your franchise that brings more plus from a slaying aspect to Tej, that's probably worth it. I'm not saying that Tej is a bad player because I think that he does make impact plays on the map. I just think the difficulty is that Boston wants to get to that like top 4 level, and Tej is not consistent enough right now, I think, from a slaying aspect to get him there, so they may look to upgrade.
A guy just came in with a resub. He goes by the name of Psych Ward Escaper. Okay. He wants to know a little bit about Scump. Obviously, rumors going around about retirement. Where do you see says future? Do you see him taking a step back? Do you see him giving MW2 a try? Me personally, I don't think he's going to step back. I think he's going to give it a go. But what do you think?
My thought on Scump Seth retiring is that I feel like it's a situation that he's going to announce before the beginning of a season. And that way, if I were him, this is how I would do it. Is like that way you can get kind of a victory. You get your farewell tour, and that way you expectation set for the end of the season. Like I would be shocked if at the end of this season that he retires in the spot that they're in. Like my guess is he definitely still wants to win. He's a competitor at heart. Like if he creates content, he's still gonna bang. So I think that's probably some time down the pipe. Whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I don't think either you or I can answer. So.
We obviously talked about Scrappy a little bit this year. Scrappy's a phenomenal player, one of the best in the best. He came out of Challengers, pretty much looked like the superstar down there. Seemed like nobody was fucking with him. Every time you watched him play, he was just a step above the rest. Currently on the Toronto Ultra bench, he's probably going to make his way into the roster. Who goes? Who do you see going? Because I feel like it's a very, very tough decision.
I think that they have very difficult and interesting decisions to make with their team and can go in about 5 or 6 different directions. And the thing I'm curious about too is that if I were Toronto, is that there are definitely also free agents that are going to become available when they get their contracts at the end. Clay tweeted about this, but you get that contract team option period, and that's when free agency starts. So like their path on decision making might actually not be super quick. As for the Scrappy thing, I think he's probably like more of a second AR type player. So that really either only leaves either Cammy or Inside if you're going to swap him out, because Ben runs second sub. So and that's a tough replacement for either, I think. Because again, as we've kind of discussed with like FaZe players and OpTic players, it's like it's so hard to evaluate this year in a vacuum, especially on players that were good last year. So I personally have no idea what direction Toronto goes in. I think it's going to a lot depend on if they can get like a Afro or a Hydra, if they really want to bring one of those players in and they know they're bringing Scrappy in, like they may make 1, 2, 3 changes depending on what they want to do.
Right, we see some people coming in about FaZe. They want to talk about Atlanta FaZe a little bit. Obviously, they were not able to find a championship this year in Vanguard, but did find multiple second place finishes. They found themselves at the top of the league as well. Where do you think their head's going into it? You think there's frustrations there? And what do you think is going to happen to the roster? Do they stick?
I think FaZe should probably stick, and I think they probably will stick. Because I don't really see like what else moves you can make that are like actually possible moves. There are only a couple of players legit out there, and it's probably less than you can count on a hand that would actually make their team better, which is ridiculous. But there are players that are like cornerstone franchise players to other teams, and they're not going anywhere. So I think they should stick it. Like they were honestly just like, they were just really like a team that like was in 4th gear all year, but could never get to 5th gear. And like, I feel like that means that your ceiling's pretty good. You just clearly just didn't have, you just had issues becoming the best team in a given period instead of being the second best team. I'm not concerned about like system fit with their players right now because everybody had their moments. Some players had better years this year. Some players had worse years. But I think they should stick it because like, bro, I mean, it's still crazy to me. We're having this conversation and they made as a core, 4 straight Call of Duty Champs Finals?
Yep. 4.
which we've never seen before. So
some people want to see Seattle make some changes. I personally think when you're at a league that's just competitive and you do find success with a team, I feel like making changes is ridiculous. I know some people may think they can upgrade a roster on paper, but I think when you find a formula that works, it's not really the best idea to fuck around with it unless you know you're getting clear upgrades. How do you feel about that?
Okay. I mean, my overall just because you guys keep asking about NYSL is like, so the Seattle thing first. So Seattle, I would say that sticking is probably their best option. But I do think that you have to, from a general manager perspective, I think like Lamar is very good and he brings a lot of other outside the game and sort of leadership to the team. I think the problem is always going to be like the slang aspect with Lamar. So the smart thing to do if you're a GM is like probably start to think about down the line what is your potential replacement for Lamar, whether that's in 1 year, 2 years, whatever. So I'd like to see Seattle at this point. Now that you have the core of a good team, in the way that FaZe has done it, but was never able to like sub in those players, and they did it with Dante. It's like find your potential down the line Lamar replacement. And then if you need to bring him in next year, if something happens with the team and they want to make a change, you're good there and you don't have to like, and I've talked about this a bunch of my streams, guys. Like I really kind of always get frustrated when I see teams don't pick up good subs before really the season starts. And then they wait until their team wants to make a change to actually pick up a sub. And they do the gap fill by like making their coach a sub. I just feel like being cheap over $50,000 when you may not be able to get the person you want down the line just seems like a real risky maneuver. In a business where if you're a front office executive, you want to leverage and manage risk on your
That's
organization.
rich coming
But
from you, Ben.
yeah, I think Seattle's sticking. And on the NYSL front, since you guys asked it a couple of times, like that's another situation, like the situation with Toronto that can go in a bunch of different directions. I think it really I think Paul and Kiz are probably locks. I would hope. I would assume they're going to bring back Krim, but like Krim didn't have an amazing year. I assume Clay's gone, but you never know. And Hydra's a big question mark because you don't know if you're going to be able to resign him or not. So they could be a squad wipe team if some shit goes down, or it could be a Paul and Kiz build around situation, but they would have to find an aggressive sub player, which is not going to be easy. And then have to either re-sign Krim and keep him as your main or get something else. So yeah, let's get a couple more questions here. Does Prolute get picked up? Probably as a sub on a team is what I think. When can teams officially sign new players? So this is what I've wondered. I think there's an edge situation and like actual. So I think once the team option period ends, if you were to negotiate a free agent, you could submit your contract to the league and get that approved. I actually don't know for a fact. Like if you have a player that's on your team has a team option, I mean, you could in this next week renegotiate an extension and sign, probably get that deal through.
Yeah.
I have a question for Ben.
Obviously, Sam and Kenny were able to
Can't
pick
hear
up
me,
some
man.
rings. Who is the best player to never win a ring?
All right.
Tom, I got to say it might be the person sitting right next to me.
That's what I'm talking about, Ben. No buys? No buys?
No bias.
Hey, should I come back?
Yeah, if you want to, but
I have a question for Ben.
there's a lot of opportunity out here, Tom.
Oh my
Got a question
God.
for you.
Yeah, what's your question, Soap?
I want to know what Ben thinks London does.
Oh, what London does. So
Yes.
London's another kind of squad wipey type situation where apparently, and it was confusing on the website, but I talked to some people and was able to figure out like most of their team is a free agent. And I've personally thought that London could go in like two directions. Direction one is continue to do this EU team thing, and then it becomes okay. Like, can we re-sign Afro and sort of build around him? Like, Nasty's pretty good. I think
But yeah, how are
Gizmo
most of them?
has
How are
a
most
lot
of
of
them free
potential,
agents?
but definitely
What?
is still like an in progress player that's probably not there yet to be like the cornerstone
Afro
of
was
a
the
champion
only
team.
the
but
only
I see
London
kinda
Royal
some
Raven
upside
last year.
there. What you get from Trey from a leadership standpoint. So they can maybe run it back with some of that squad and their pieces. You've got a lot of really good EU players that have played really good in challengers this year. They can get called up and given a shot on this team. The B situation, which I don't think they're going to do, is do you try and do like a EU NA mixed team and try and like find a way to sort of bring in some of this NA veterans that sort of know how to win, which this team kind of misses outside of Trey. But again, I don't see that as like the number one option because you know, they like to do EU teams. And actually, we have someone in the chat who could be, if he comes back, would be interesting.
Rated, now that we have you here, obviously, you know, you were in the Pro League, and you turned some heads in there. You had a lot of great games, and I think a lot of people think you're an incredible player, but you made a switch over to Warzone. Will we ever see you coming back into the league? Is there any interest there?
Is that actually rated, though?
User disconnected from your channel.
I'm pretty sure that's him. Rated, apparently that's not you. So we're gonna ignore that question. That's not the right rating. That we appreciate the resub though. He said, "Happy birthday, Tommy. You're the fucking goat, man. I wanted to take a picture with you." So okay, if I would have read that, I would have knew it wasn't him. If I would have read that initially. I wanted to take a picture with you, but I didn't see you. But at least I saw you last year and got a pic. Keep the grind going, my man. Hey, yo, Rated, I appreciate you, bro. You're the fucking man, bro. And I hope to see you in the Pro League one day, my guy. Hey, you deserve to be in there, Rated. You know what I'm saying, my guy? Hey, appreciate the resub. Thank you for the kind words. It's an absolute pleasure.
Sound muted.
All right, Ben, I'm going to talk to my chat real quick. Let's put on a show or some shit, bro. Put something on the big screen.
Outside? In the living room?
Outside? Yeah, in the living room. The fuck? The fuck, Ben? Where else would you gonna do it? Hell no, my room. What are you fucking on a couch, fool? Jesus. Hey, yo, what's good with this guy? Man, I might need to lock the door. Jesus Christ.